back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. Yet again, Drago Bosnić is here with us. How you doing, Drago? Welcome back.
Thank you. It's great being here again, and it's great talking about all these things we're going to go through, I guess.
Yeah, we've got some interesting topics lined up, from historical to the current, and some history repeating itself, which is the best kind of comedy. Everybody, welcome back to this comedy YouTube channel. If you're new here, like, share, and subscribe. If you're not new here, thank you for sticking around. Drago, you sent along a bunch of stuff. One of the articles that you sent along, let's see if I can get this here. There we go. The treatment of Russia at the UN shows the urgent need of reform or replacement of Russia. Russia needs to be reformed or replaced?
Yeah, I guess the NATO and the political West are probably thinking now, they need to replace Russia with, I guess, like 10 or 15 other entities which are going to be more compliant with the rules-based order, I guess.
Yeah, but no, seriously, your article here, you're trying to say that the UN needs a refresh, huh?
Yeah, I truly believe that because it's not just like the atrocious treatment of like non-Western or like non-Western aligned diplomats. It's also the fact that the U.S. is abusing its position as the host country for the UN to prevent, countries from, diplomats from non-Western aligned countries to actually do their job. So like they will withhold visas, or they will like outright ban, certain diplomats from entering the country. So like, and then they can, of course, set up the votes, in whichever way they find it fit, geopolitically. So, I have a very hard time believing that the UN in its current form is an impartial organization because, for example, the General Secretary, Mr. Guterres, he criticized Russia, but I've never heard him criticize the US, and any of their dozens of ongoing invasions and meddlings in other countries' affairs. So like a double standard is quite obvious there. And then the treatment of Lavrov, who was chairing the UN Security Council for April, testament that it's been quite embarrassing, in the sense that it's very undiplomatic to treat an actual diplomat and a very high-ranking diplomat at that. So.
Explain to people how the UN General Security Council works in regards to the rotating presidency, and how come it is that Russia is now in charge.
Yeah, as we all know, there are 5 permanent members: Russia, United States, UK, France, and China. And there are 10 other which are being elected and changed each year, I think. So each month, each member of the Security Council gets the chance to chair it's like a formality. It's not like you control the UN Security Council completely because you still have to vote. But there is the point that the chair country can actually, can raise up certain issues. They can decide what they're going to be talking about and so on. And they wanted to prevent Russia from doing that because they know that Russia is going to essentially call out the U.S. and their allies and vassals and satellite states on whatever, things they're doing. And of course, this is very, it's very bad for their media because they have to hide it. They can't report on what the Russians are actually saying because it's going to, reveal what the U.S. and their allies are doing around the world. So, essentially they just want to keep the narrative going. They don't want any dissenting voices coming from anywhere. So they want to do everything in their power to essentially, just stop Russia from saying anything. And we've seen that when Lavrov was trying to speak, essentially.
You're calling for the breakup of the institution that's basically in control of the peace, quote unquote, since World War II. And those astute people who have an idea of history might actually know that this is UN 2.0, and the first one was called the League of Nations. So what you're saying
Right.
is there needs to be like a UN 3.0
Yeah,
that
but I'm
is.
saying war, right? Because like the League of Nations
Mhm.
actually contributed to war by not listening to anything that the Germans and the Italians were saying, right? So essentially, it's now the history is repeating itself now. In the sense that they're trying to isolate certain countries, like they're or trying to create the illusion of isolation. So because like Russia is not really isolated, right? But the point is, like the UN, because it's on American soil, they're trying to portray Russia as being isolated and alone and like hated and whatever. So like they keep pushing these anti-Russian resolutions and so on and so on. So the UN is essentially like in its current form, it's contributing to pushing us to World War III.
So what you're telling me is we should give up on the UN. How long do you think this has been going on? Like, I mean, it's obvious now. It's like so obvious. But as you know, as a Serb and as a former Yugoslav and as like somebody who's been alive for a while now, you can't help but notice even before the Yugoslavia stuff. The UN
Oh
wasn't
yeah,
exactly, impartial. We can even go back as far as, Korea or Vietnam.
yeah. I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that. Like the Korean War, which was a civil war between the South and the North, was like the UN was officially on the side of the South. Like officially, that was the official thing. So it's like they're hardly impartial. They've hardly ever been impartial. I can't think of one moment in history, like in its own history, like for the last 70 or almost 80 years, when the UN was 100% impartial. I mean, to a certain extent, that's logical because America provides the bulk of financing for the UN. I think it's in a range of 35 to 40%, with, for example, other vassals, providing much of the rest. I think
Hmm.
Japan is like at 5. I'm not sure exactly on the numbers. They usually change these numbers, so they've changed over the years. China has increased its financing for the UN, but still, like the bulk of it is coming from the political West. So I understand to a certain degree, like why the UN is pro-Western more than impartial as it should be,
Hmm.
but still, like its founding principles should be impartial, right?
Yeah.
But they're not, unfortunately.
Yeah. Um, Nuclear terrorism. What
Yeah.
what are the technologies that you're mentioning in this article? Why are
Well,
sensitive U.S. nuclear technologies in Ukraine?
essentially, the Americans are claiming they're nothing special. Just like Victoria Nuland said, it's just biological research facilities that are being, that are being maintained in Ukraine by the peaceful organization known as the Pentagon. So essentially, this is the same thing. The most peaceful organizations in U.S. in the history, especially in the U.S. history, are also conducting peaceful experiments in a nuclear power plant
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
peaceful nuclear technology. So again, it's there's nothing dangerous about it, I guess, right? I mean, if the Americans said that it's not dangerous, then 100% it's not dangerous.
But is this when you say like technologies? Is this stuff that's in the like Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, or is this you know
It's
who
like the
knows what?
Russians, like I can't confirm 100% what it is,
Hmm.
but the fact that like in all seriousness, but the fact that the Americans are so worried about it, it tells me it's something military grade because like they wouldn't be talking about it all the time. I doubt they have any civilian nuclear technologies which are of interest to the Russians because the Russians are pretty good at this. They're Rosatom
Yeah,
Corporation, which built power plants. They're like the top of the line
including
in the
floating ones.
civilian
Yeah.
floating reactors. Exactly. So like they're like at the top of their game in terms of civilian technologies.
Hmm.
So this has something nuclear grade. Like I have no other like explanation for this.
Yeah.
And the fact they were demanding from the Russians, to give these technologies back. It's a little bit, it was funny to me, but it tells a lot, because they're so worried, and also the fact that they sent the International Atomic Agency, and even the director of this agency actually went to the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant to talk to the Russians. I mean, it tells you a lot. I guess these technologies have been there, maybe years before the SMO started, and it would also explain like why the Zelensky and the rest of the Kiev regime, they were bragging about making nuclear weapons, actual nuclear weapons, months before the SMO.
So you're saying,
I guess
you're saying there's a possibility that there's like a Ukrainian nuclear program / dirty weapons program / depleted uranium program / spent fuel program in Ukraine.
Absolutely. Like they have several nuclear power plants. I think they were like among the 5 nations in Europe, or maybe even 3, when it comes to the number of nuclear power plants they have. Plus, like Zaporozhye MPP is the largest of such plant in Europe. So, like, what else is there? What else could it be? Because whenever the Americans were, worried about sensitive technologies of any kind getting into wrong hands, it was usually like biological, nuclear, chemical, and so on. So, like, it has to be weapons grade, like when taking into account how they reacted to it.
You don't think it could be the same kind of chemical weapons that were in Iraq, the non-existent kind, and could be just like reason to get in?
Could, it could be non-existent, but in this case, like, it's nuclear in a nuclear power plant, so it's very, very possible that they just send certain weapons, certain the technologies that could help in creating weapons. Like it doesn't need to be like a full-blown nuclear weapon. It could be, like, as you said, like a dirty bomb or something. But if you put it on a missile, now you have a nuclear deterrent. Because
or like,
if you fire a dirty,
or like enrichment facility thing, that spinner thing that makes enriched uranium. Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, that makes sense.
exactly.
Dirty bombs also. Yeah, it's not like they haven't talked about using dirty bombs. I think that's what the conspiracy theory about the Gostomel landing in the Mirna is all about. But I think we covered that article pretty well. Let's get on to everybody's favorite Ottoman Sultan, Erdogan. Post Erdogan Turkey, is that a real thing? You think he's not gonna be a president for life? Sultan for the Middle East?
I don't know. Like, actually, in this case, I was referring to the possibility of him, not living very long, I guess, because he had like this heart attack scare. I think it was last week, or at some point last week.
But so, was it real, or was it like a leftist press heart attack scare?
Like, well, I'm not sure. Like, the doctors said that he was okay, and like he spoke after that. So I guess like it wasn't a real heart attack, but like, it's this is not the first time that he's had like these health issues. So, and also, like, we don't know. I mean, I know I'm walking on the edge here, but like, who knows like what countries could have could send someone to accelerate his
the heart attack gun
conditions. Let's put it that way.
The heart attack gun.
Yeah, like a heart attack gun or something like that. Like I'm sure they can think of something to get rid of him if he's too much of a hurdle. However, like he's been quite good at playing all sides so far. So, but still, like, after Erdogan, I don't see anyone who could actually, replace him as a sovereign leader, sovereign in the sense that he, like of his own independence. And I think after Erdogan, which is going to come at some point, Turkey could indeed be a Trojan horse for NATO, in the greater Eurasia. because the Western services still control a large portion of the Turkish military, and also they have a lot of influence. Even though
Mm-hmm.
this influence has eroded in recent years, especially since 2016, but still this influence is quite strong in other political parties. So and also Turkey, despite their like cordial relationship with Russia, like they are actually way more like, let's say, arch rivals in nearly every geopolitical uh, arena, be it Africa, like in Libya, or I don't know, in Syria, or like elsewhere. And also, like Turkey is a big supplier of weapons to the AFU, even though like they're keeping the cordial relationship with Russia because of the economy. But essentially, like they are continuing with the arms deliveries to the Ukrainians, and I'm pretty sure the Russians are not happy about it, but they don't have much of a choice now when it comes to their relationships in Europe and Near East.
I don't know. Turkey, from what I was listening to somebody on some stream somewhere, and they were saying how Turkey, like historically, has a couple of different factions within it, and
Yeah,
even though the Erdogan faction is like now in the lead, there's many in the shadows which are like pushing for power, and like you say, when the era of the Sultan of Erdogan finishes, it is likely that one of these turns out to be a Trojan horse, as you say, for the Eurasian side of Turkey.
exactly.
Let's see what other articles you've got for us here. The next one is Russia's retribution was Mazdia.
Yeah,
Um, for the NATO-backed Georgian Legion. What is this? I have no idea what this is. Who are these people? They,
yeah.
they,
The
they don't
Georgian
look
Legion,
happy.
like it's called the Georgian Legion, but it's not made of exclusively of Georgians. Like there's a lot of
Hmm.
Americans, Western Poles, and so on. But they've been active in the Ukrainian conflict since, well, the beginning, since 2014. And of course, as you know, and I'm sure like most of your informed viewers know so as well, Georgian snipers took part directly in the Maidan coup, which brought the not the peaceful coalition that took over the
The Nazis, the fans of nuts. They're fans of
right,
nuts,
right,
so they're Nazis.
exactly.
They like nuts.
Exactly. Like the fans of nuts, as you said, and a very peaceful crowd, as far as I know.
Hmm.
And
Mostly
after
peaceful
they took
protests.
power, exactly, the protests actually escalated after the Georgian snipers started, let's say, handing out ice creams to other people.
Taking photographs. That's the
So
new lingo.
yeah,
Shots.
exactly. And they've been involved for quite some time, and they've been on Kremlin's target list for all this time, of course.
Hmm.
And also as far as we all know, they tortured and killed several Russian, or maybe a dozen or even more Russian POWs at the start of the
Hmm.
SMO, ever since, of course. And the FSB and other services were following them, and they were tracking them, and so on. So what happened is that last week, at some point, like I think early last week, I can't remember the exact date, uh, there was an Iskander missile which I guess misfired and hit them, unfortunately.
What do you mean? Like friendly fire incident?
No, I was just being sarcastic.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
and it's gonna was targeted at them, and then it just landed
Isk-
accidentally, of course, because Russians don't have precision weapons.
Iskanders
Um,
are ballistic, correct? They're like Soviet era.
right.
They're Soviet era huge ballistic missiles.
Well, like they were developed, like the development process started in the late Soviet era, but it was completed in the Russian Federation during the 90s, and it was
Hmm.
inducted in 2006.
Oh,
I mean, it is
really?
essential. Yeah, we could consider it like probably the first hypersonic missile because it's not really ballistic. It like the Western analysts like to call it quasi-ballistic because it doesn't have a ballistic. It has like a very flat flight path,
Mm-hmm.
but it can actually maneuver and it can fly hypersonic in the late stages of the flight.
Mm-hmm.
So like it could be considered like maybe not like 100%, but like 90% a hypersonic weapon. And of course, the Kinjal was based on it, and essentially like it has like various types of warheads that can be used. And of course, in this case, it used like this anti-personnel fragmentation warhead, which killed around like 60 or 70 of these of the members of this Georgian Legion.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I know, like the Russians have confirmed that most of those guys who were targeted actually took part in war crimes against not just Russian POWs, but also like Donbass civilians.
Возмездие comes for everyone.
Right.
Nuclear is going to have to be in the title of this video because you sent me two articles. The second one is about a nuclear, as Americans like to say, nuclear false flag in Ukraine. What is this about? What?
Yeah,
I'll pretend I don't know. Tell me. What is this about?
Well, essentially, like you can say, it ties into what we were talking about the MPP, the Zaporozhye MPP. So essentially, like as you know, like this is what I think actually happened. I suppose, considering the fact that Ukrainians were actually inducting the Grom-2 missile into service like quite fast. The Russians have been hitting it and shooting it down quite consistently now.
This is
like
the one.
As far as I know,
this is the one that the Russians shot down in Crimea like last week or something, right?
exactly. That's the exact missile, and they haven't just shot it down in Crimea. They've also shot it down over Donbass, and I think it at least like one other place. Like they've shot it down. They've shot down all those which have been fired. So now, like the Ukrainians have access to these sensitive nuclear technologies, and they also have delivery systems. Now that's quite dangerous, right? Now you have a combination of two things that could give you a deliverable nuclear weapon, right? So this article ties into that. So essentially, like not going like too much into details.
Russia,
I think
Russia was unprovoked, is what you're saying.
Exactly. That's the whole point. Like Russia was completely unprovoked. The Kiev regime never said anything about getting nukes. That was just like imaginary. Like I guess Putin, is going crazy, so he probably just made that up in his own mind. I don't know how it ended in the news. I suppose and how Putin managed to control the minds of Ukrainian diplomats who said they will get nuclear weapons, but I guess it's his fault. They should probably check how he managed to do that.
I thought you said you played the Generals Command and Conquer with Yuri, the mind control guy. Right. It's mind control.
Yuri works for Putin, I guess.
Exactly. How did you not know that? It's been in the culture since the inception of time. The next interesting article that you've sent along is Tucker Carlson's resignation. We called it here on Working Brother Talks that it was Tucker Carlson's firing that was the signal for the beginning of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. So we've got that going for us. Kiev's regime meddling, it destroys last vestiges of press freedom in the U.S. Press freedom in the U.S.? It's good this is a comedy show, because otherwise I don't think it would be free enough to be out on YouTube, to say the least.
Right.
Go on. Tell me about press freedom in the U.S.
Yeah, as you know, like the freest country on the planet. Of course, the bastion of freedom and democracy, as Tucker Carlson put it several times himself. I mean, like he was saying it for several years, I guess. because he believed in it until like he got censored several times and then he got fired, because the censorship just became unbearable essentially. And like I'm not saying Tucker Carlson is perfect. Obviously, he's not. Like nobody is. I tend to disagree with his views on China sometimes and some other countries and so on. But at least when it comes to Russia, he has been relatively, let's say, unbiased, and he's been relatively sane, right? Unlike the rest of the American MSM. Because like he says, oh, I don't want to die in a nuclear holocaust. I don't want 6,000 nuclear weapons, dropped on my head and my family's head. So I guess, like he wanted to avoid that at all costs. And he contributed, like, I guess he contributed at least like 1% to preventing that, which is more than what the rest of the American MSM did or does. So like essentially what and I've watched that episode where you talked about the possibility that he was removed because of the upcoming offensive, and that was actually a very good point. And it perfectly ties in with this story I wrote, because essentially the Kiev regime, starting with Zelensky himself, they actually asked the U.S. establishment to remove Tucker or to silence him, in other ways, essentially just to get him removed from, these big networks so that people cannot hear what he's saying. Like it's very, very unpleasant for Zelensky for Tucker, when Tucker actually, calls out and reveals all these extremely honest schemes that Zelensky has, with the rest of his entourage. So, I guess like he was just like too embarrassed by the fact that Tucker was talking all about all these humanitarian efforts of Zelensky and his team.
Followers of the channel who are also subscribed on Telegram will have seen what one of our guests, Nebojša Malic from RT in the US, shared on his Telegram. The lingo, I don't have it handy, let's put it that way, to show everyone, but you'll have seen it on the channel. It was like a what to say and what not to say dictionary from the Ukrainian embassy for Serbian media, and how to refer to the Russian aggression as opposed to the special military operation or anything else. It was hilarious, and it like if it's sent to media by the Ukrainian embassy, I can only imagine what's being done on the electronic level with YouTube and all the other lovely big companies. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. And the U.S. is digging its own grave, basically, with this kind of attacking its own freedom of the press. But it's nothing new, if you ask me. And nothing new.
Yeah, like it's always been like that. Like they've been suppressing like info which is contrary to the narrative for, I guess, since ever, right? But
Alex Jones.
Like at least like during the Iraq War or even Vietnam, you could still like hear the other perspective. But in the last like 10 or 15 years, this has like been turned on its head. Like you can't hear almost nothing about the other side. Like the other side is patently evil. Like there's no other way around it, right? Like it's evil. And even like Tucker had to say several times, like Russia is evil, Russia is doing the wrong thing, but let's try to understand, their actions, like, because like it's these like actions are like illogical if you from Western perspective, right? Like Putin is crazy, right? But still he's evil, right?
And he's
like,
dying.
Shouldn't you talk?
He's dying too, man. And he's crazy.
Right.
And he's evil.
Right. So then he's evil, like, and then Tucker would say, like, shouldn't you talk to the guy? Because, he kind of has the red button, which can, he can press and launch 6,000 nukes. Like, shouldn't you talk to the guy?
What was the name?
Like the Western.
What was the name of the
tough one?
What was the name of that other American journalist slash documentary filmmaker that did that Putin film a couple of years ago? Um, he also
Oh yeah, I know. I
he
can't remember the guy's name, but I know what you mean.
older gentleman, really serious documentary filmmaker. He recently came out with a statement as well.
Oliver Stone.
Oliver Stone. There you go. There you go. Oliver Stone. He recently came out with a statement basically saying that I should go back to Russia and see what the other side is saying because nobody's asking the other side what they're saying, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Speaking of opposite perspectives, so to say, or opposite opinions, this Polish general says the situation does not look good for Kiev. Who is this Polish general? Is he the Russian
He's actually
propagandist?
the chief of Andreychuk, I think that's his last name. He's the chief of the general staff of the Polish armed forces. I guess he's nobody, right? Like just the top general of the Polish army.
Probably doesn't know what's
And
going
he's
on.
saying, yeah, bro probably doesn't know, doesn't have a clue. So like he's saying that it's not a very good situation for the Kiev regime, but I guess he's just been fed Russian propaganda. So I'm not sure if I should say anything about that.
Speaking of Poles, you must have heard of that recent incident with that little Polish plane, the unarmed,
Yeah,
quote unquote, Polish plane that was doing EU border missions.
right. Well,
It,
in the modern era of warfare, a plane doesn't need to carry missiles at all to be considered armed and dangerous because as soon as you have electronic equipment for surveillance or anything like that, you are essentially armed because you are armed with information which then you can send or relay to someone who has a weapon and then which can be used against you. So
somebody had to
essentially,
say it. Somebody had to say it. I'm
yeah,
glad you said it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's essentially like the warfare has changed completely. Like
Hmm.
being able to see your enemy is at this point is almost the same as being able to shoot at your enemy
Yeah.
because you're going to tell that relay that information to someone who can actually shoot. So and this is what the NATO has been doing for more than a year, and this has actually prevented a very swift defeat of the Kiev regime, which means that NATO is essentially directly involved in the conflict.
This is basically like saying that those little unarmed flying drones that are collecting positions of, opposing forces and correcting artillery fire are unarmed drones. They're civilian drones. They're not doing anything military.
Exactly. It's like saying if you're a sniper guy, it's like saying the spotter next to you is a non-combatant, right? It's hilarious.
He's usually a medic, at least if he's from the foreign troops. Yeah.
Right. He's there just to tell me jokes when I get bored, right? Nothing
Um,
more.
Tell me your take on the way this Polish plane was intercepted. Because from what I understand, the Russians tried to make contact with it as per protocol and warned it 3 times. It ignored the warning 3 times, and then they flew professionally and environmentally unfriendly and all that other stuff, like we discussed in another video.
Right.
What do you have to say about the effectiveness of the Russian non kinetic deterrence?
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's great because essentially, as I said, the same with the drone. They're preventing the enemy from getting real-time battlefield information. So, whatever the Russian pilot did, it worked, and that's the only thing that matters because it saves lives. It saves the lives of Russian soldiers. It saves the lives of Russian-speaking civilians. So essentially, they can call it, non-professional, environmentally unfriendly, all they want. The point is, the Russians they've shown that they will always do this, and there is no way, for anyone to prevent them. Especially, considering the fact that Russian jets are usually more robust than Western jets. So like I wouldn't want to collide with a Russian jet, if I were in a Western airplane of any kind, especially if it's something like F-35, which is afraid of lightnings and I don't know rain or whatever, wind, I guess. So like I think it's a strong message from the Russian side, and I think it's also like preventing others from getting closer, which again is contributing to the suppression of this sharing of the real-time information with the Kiev regime. So it's working.
One of the next articles, or I think the last article actually, that you sent along, has to do with our northern neighbors, Russia's northwestern neighbors. Finland, NATO, U.S. military bases.
Yeah.
Don't they ever learn, man? Don't people ever like learn anything from history?
I guess not. I guess not. Like when they say the history repeats itself, this is like quite literally the case. Like it's crazy. I can't believe it because Finland lost 2 wars. And essentially whenever they talk about the Russo-Finnish wars, they usually like to use that against Russia, which I really don't understand. Of course, like the Winter War, which was in 39 and 40. It went like relatively complicated for the Soviet side, but they won, right? And people lost 11% of their territory. And then the continuation war, they lost even more, and they essentially became like a semi-colony of the USSR for the next 10 years or so. And like it took them 40 years to regain their independence. So like, wasn't that enough? Right? And like all that was before the Soviets had and the Russians had nukes, right? Like they lost 2 wars before Russia had thousands of nukes. And like to me, it's funny when people are comparing a potential conflict between Finland and Russia as if it's going to be something akin to the one that happened 80 years ago or more than 80 years ago. Like it's not going to be scores of Russian charging at Finnish camouflage Finnish position. It's going to be scores of cruise missiles destroying Finnish cities before anyone crosses the border. So it's not going to be very good.
You're saying it's going to be a bunch of boiling lakes in Finland, basically. Isn't Finland known for lakes?
Exactly. Like don't they have, as you said, like don't they have enough lakes already as it is? and like like it's, and also as I said like before, we already talked about this before. NATO doesn't bring anything to the table when it comes to Finnish security. On the contrary, it always makes Finland the primary target, just like it makes the Baltic states and Poland and these other countries which want to host American weapons and bombers and even nuclear weapons. All this makes them a primary target. So Finland is doing the exact same thing they did when they let Wehrmacht, on their territory in 1941, to participate in the Barbarossa invasion. So, and they know what happened in the end. There are people who are still alive in Finland that actually remember this era. So, and they're making the exact same mistake, and I really don't get it. And that's why even worse, actually. The Russians don't have a reason to let Finland exist as an independent country if they do this for the 3rd time. Really, they don't have a single reason to let Finland continue existing. And I think Finland is a cool country. They have a lot of these very great bands which I used to listen as a kid, and I don't want to see them destroyed. Right? So
you're saying it's going to be the Russian Republic of Finland soon? The Russian Republic of former Finland?
Yeah, maybe it's not going to be soon, but it's going to be at some point.
Within our lifetime. Within our lifetime is too soon for me.
Yeah,
let's put it that way.
Yeah, very very likely if they continue with this path, and I wouldn't want to see them destroyed, and this is exactly what's going to happen if they continue doing this.
I've got a screenshot up here in the background. I just want for people they can pause it and like look. It was from Defense Politics Asia today, and he like forwarded his opinion basically and ChatGPT's opinion on the Finnish wars and how people should basically, as you're saying, stop using it as a positive example of Russia being defeated, because Russia wasn't exactly defeated, and Finland
Exactly.
lost territory both times.
Exactly.
Off the cuff, one of the topics that I wanted to bring up, this is from a very censored source, South Front. Everybody has maybe heard of them. This article is not yours, but it shows the Bar getting shot down over Kiev. Over Kiev. Apparently, the Russians hacked the Baryaktar.
Yeah, that's what I also like had in mind, because like like the reason that they had to shut it down, that the Ukrainian military actually said, was that they lost control over the drone.
Mm-hmm.
But as considering that we are perfectly aware of how potent the Russian electronic warfare capabilities are, I would say that it's extremely possible that the Russians hacked into it and just like let it fly around, or even controlled it at some point. And then not knowing what's going to happen with the drone, they were forced to shoot it down. And like one of the versions of the event says that they had to use the IRIS-T, the German-made air defense system, to do it. So, like, I think one missile of the IRIS-T system costs around $500,000, and they also lost several, like the drone itself, with several $1,000,000 of which have been completely wasted for nothing, essentially.
Okay.
And as average lost most of their Bayaktars already. So.
About the Baryaktars, there was a rumor or like information flying around on Telegram. So who knows how real it is. That Turks sold some of the control codes, let's say, for the Baryaktars to the Russians after they sold the drones to the Ukrainians. Have you heard anything about this?
I've heard. I've heard of that, but I'm very skeptical, because first of all, like I'm not sure like how much the Russians would have had to pay for that, because like this effectively, like this conflict in Ukraine, the SMO, like this stage of the Ukrainian conflict, it virtually destroyed Bayraktar's reputation, which like the Turks were trying to build for several years. Of course, it was based on like false sense of superiority. Like it is superior when you don't have air defenses at all. Like it's a very very useful tool. But like when you do have air defenses of any kind, or at least like half decent air defenses, Bayraktar is nothing essentially. So like it's an anti-insurgency weapon. Like you can use it against ragtag militias or terrorist groups, which have nothing more than light weapons, or maybe sometimes they have some of these light air defense systems like man pads and so on and so on. But even then, it's risky for drones like the Bayraktar, because it's relatively expensive. Of course, like it's a drone. Like the pilot is not going to get killed because there is no pilot, but still, like you could lose a very expensive drone. And using it in a high intensity conventional warfare, it's completely useless. Like the Russians have shot down approximately 100 Bayraktars so far. So like what's the point of using it? And that's why like I think the Turks, like for them it makes no sense to sell anything to the Russians concerning the Bayraktar, and I don't think they even had to, because the Russians were perfectly, capable of detecting the Bayraktars and shooting them down themselves, I guess.
The source was Russian, first of all, so I'll put that out the way. And second of all,
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past the Turks, you know, culturally, historically, I wouldn't put it past them
It's
to
not
like
uncommon.
to like play both sides, and
Yeah,
and considering the fact that Istanbul is becoming, or not Istanbul, but like Turkey in general, is becoming a gas hub of the region. It's very and like there's this a lot of pipelines coming in from Russia that were supposed to like end on other parts of the Black Sea, but because NATO, they ended up in Turkey, which ironically enough is also NATO, and it's becoming the like gas hub of the air of the region. So I wouldn't put it past diplomatic high level negotiations. We're like, okay, fine, we'll give you like 10 more million cubic tons of gas, but you give us those Bayraktar
that's
codes.
possible. In that regard, like if we're looking at the bigger picture, yeah, that definitely sounds more plausible. However, like I can't like confirm 100% that's exactly what happened, but
Hmm.
like I'm not saying it didn't. I'm just saying
It's a
like
comedy show.
I think, but it's not impossible, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Drago, is there anything else you want to cover that we might not have touched upon?
Yeah, like I would just like to mention, because I've been reading Western media. They've been going crazy that Ukraine shot down Kinjal. I'm pretty sure you've heard of it. On May 5th, allegedly,
The
they shot down a
Ukraine, the Ukraine Foreign or like Ministry of Defense said that they didn't. Like the next day, they were like, no, no,
Yeah,
we didn't.
he
Yeah.
denied it, but now CNN and these other, free press media are like they keep, like spinning the story, and they
It's
keep
that
like saying, "Oh, it
it's that
happened,"
old saying. It's that old saying that the lie gets halfway around the world before the truth is 1 foot out the door.
Yeah, before the truth is so like I'm sure people have seen the pictures,
Hmm.
and like it's obvious that because the Patriot system uses kinetic warheads, which like physically hit the target. Like it's obvious that they actually hit something, but it's not a Kinshal because like I just want to say like you don't have to be Einstein or even like a physics teacher to understand that if a Mach 3.5 missile hits a missile which is moving Mach 12, like it's not going to leave a small hole, it's not going to leave a missile a hole, falling to the ground almost unscathed where you can just show it to everyone, because there's not going to be nothing left, right? If we can count the speeds,
I saw the picture. It actually never crossed my mind the speeds that these missiles are going at. And when you said Mach 3 and Mach 12, I couldn't stop laughing. Yeah, just the kinetic energy is like there's nothing that's gonna be vaporized, whatever it is.
exactly like you would have to collect sparks, to for any evidence, to show. And nobody's going to believe it because nobody's going to think it was ever a missile or any hole, right? So it's ridiculous. Like they don't have to trust anyone. Just, trust your own judgment. Do you think if I hit you with the speed of like can you imagine two cars going 100 miles per hour to each other? Like would they stay whole in any way? Like or would they look like more like pancakes made of aluminum or whatever? So it's
Well,
ridiculous.
yeah, it's good. It's good you pointed that out. I never thought about the speeds. Um, what can I say? Yeah, propaganda. Just make it dumb enough so people believe it.
Exactly.
Anything else that you want to bring up? That was good. I like that one.
That will be it. I guess we had enough comedy for today.
All right, everybody who stuck around to the end, thank you for being here. Everybody who's new, like, share, and subscribe. Some music for the outro. Drago, thank you. Everyone, see you later.